Evolution. It's a pretty cool natural process. I mean, in a world where everything wants you dead, it's nice to know that there's something out there that's willing to give you a hand or two, but the process isn't perfect. And I'm disappointed to say that, even after my insanely high budget critique video on it a few months ago, Mr. John Evolution has still not fixed the absolute abominations that he's left behind. So I'm here making a second call out post on my youtube.com. Evolution pissed all over the gene pool, and now there's animals that have some massive design flaws roaming around like it's no big deal. Absolutely unacceptable. So without further ado, let's talk about some more of the worst designed animals in the world. First up, we have the giant squid. Now this thing has a pretty good reputation over the years as an apex predator. I mean, taking down entire ships, fighting with huge sperm whales, seems like they've got this whole survival of the fittest thing in the bag. And Evolution's given it some pretty good features too to help it get its reputation. But I guess Evolution couldn't let it get too powerful, God knows what those tentacles are capable of, and so it had to add a little something to make sure that it stayed in the water and didn't take over the entire planet. This design flaw comes in the form of its brain. You see, most normal animals have a brain on top, then a mouth and a food pipe that leads to the stomach, simple stuff. Everything works great. The giant squid on the other hand has a different system. Its brain is shaped like a donut, circular in shape with a hole in the middle, and the squid's food pipe goes through this hole. So this means that if the squid ever gets too hungry and eats anything too large, it literally risks severe brain damage. Giant squids also like to try and eat sperm whales, aka one of the largest animals on earth, so they really gotta be careful and chew their food properly. But I guess you do learn to be pretty patient while eating when the alternative is a slow and painful death. At least they have good table manners. Next up, we have the sloth. Now in my last video on the topic, I talked about the absolute atrocity that is the koala, and the sloth is pretty much its South American cousin. I mean, these guys are so slow that their name is literally one of the 7 deadly sins. Kind of unfair to sentence them to eternal damnation so quickly, but I would be lying if I said it wasn't deserved. Just like koalas, sloths, as the name suggests, are pretty lazy animals. They spend most of their time hanging from branches, and they move a whopping 0.003 miles per hour. Not because they want to, but because they literally do not have the energy to go any faster. A sloth's diet consists of mostly leaves from the trees that it lives in, which aren't exactly the most nutritious thing out there, so they end up eating a shit ton of leaves to even survive in the first place, and their digestion process can take more than a month to complete. Sloths are constantly on the brink of just running out of energy and dying, so it makes sense why they'd want to waste as little energy as possible. But this also means that they can't regulate their body temperature that well. Humans and other mammals normally have things like shivering or sweating to control their temperature, but if it's too hot or too cold, all sloths can do is kinda just wait there and hope the weather gets better. Normally this wouldn't be much of a problem, except for the fact that sloth digestion depends on the bacteria in their intestines that only work at a certain temperature. So if the temperature is not perfect, the entire digestion process stops, and the sloth ends up dying of starvation even when it has a full stomach of food because it can't do anything with it. But once they do finish digesting, they gotta then get rid of the waste. To do this, they climb all the way down their tree, do their thing on the ground, and then climb all the way back up. Unfortunately for them, the ground also contains an entire forest worth of predators who would like nothing better than a slow-moving, delicious meal that can't defend itself. So pretty much the only reason that sloths have made it this far is because the other animals haven't figured out tree climbing. But on the positive side, sloths have figured out agriculture. They move so slowly that they're basically an ecosystem of their own, with bugs and algae growing all over their body. So if they ever get too hungry, they can just scrape off some of that good old homegrown hair mold and have a tasty snack. How delicious. Now for some quick ones. Giraffes give birth while standing up, so the first thing a baby giraffe experiences is a 5-foot drop to the ground as soon as it enters the world. Which might seem harsh, but then again, life in the African savannah isn't exactly a walk in the park, so I guess that's one way to toughen your baby up. Human jaws are too small to fit all our teeth in, so every year, around 5 million people have to get their wisdom teeth removed to prevent them from damaging the other teeth. This change happened all the way back around 12,000 years ago when we started farming plants for food. These food were softer, so our jaws became smaller as time went on. So if you're having teeth problems, all you gotta do is return to monkey. Eat raw meat and unwashed vegetables straight from the dirt. You'll either get a great set of pearly whites or acute food poisoning, but that's a risk I'm willing to take. There's a bird that's only found in New Zealand called the kakapos. This one isn't useless through any fault of its own, except for the fact that it's really nice and friendly. Like when humans come near it, it just walks right up to them and just vibes with no fear. Which is nice and all, except for the fact that when humans arrived in New Zealand, they also brought over animals like cats. And believe me, your sweet little kitten would like nothing better than to rip apart the throat of an unsuspecting bird, especially an unsuspecting bird that literally walks right up to it. Plus, kakapo birds are flightless, so they really stood no chance against any predators that arrived. Now they're critically endangered and the government has to take huge efforts to keep their species alive. So the moral of the story is that you should never be friends with anyone because they'll always end up killing you. Or at least that's what I tell myself when I get lonely. A few species of sharks give birth to babies with fully functional teeth, and this means that when they're swimming around in the womb, shark babies sometimes like to gobble up their siblings before they're even born. I mean, at least the giraffe actually came out of the womb before it got the 5 feet drop. This one's just unfair. The moral of the story is, eat your siblings? Yeah, sure, why not? Eat your siblings before they eat you. Lastly, we have the sunfish. You ever experienced something that makes you believe in a higher power? Maybe you found 20 bucks on the floor the exact moment you realized you didn't have your wallet. Maybe school was cancelled the day you forgot to study for a test. Well, I hope you're ready to completely lose that faith, because let me tell you, no benevolent god would ever let an animal like this exist. Sunfish come in at around 2 meters in length and weigh more than 1000 kg. And at first, you might think there's something wrong with this picture. Maybe a few missing body parts or something. But nah, that's just how it looks. The sunfish is basically just a giant head with 2 barely working fins attached, which move it just enough to gobble up whatever unsuspecting jellyfish that happens to get in its way. So basically, it's everyone's first rejected spore creature. Now the sunfish is born with a fully functional tail, just like a normal fish, but as it grows, the tail just refuses to grow, and instead forms this weird fucking tumor that does jack shit in helping it actually move around. So it's basically just a huge chunk of meat that's floating around in the ocean completely defenseless. You might think that this would make it a prime target for predators, but turns out they don't even bother eating it because it's just too big. So it's just a giant pile of meat floating around in the ocean, surviving purely because it's too much of a hassle to actually eat it. In fact, the only things that do eat it are the hundreds of parasites that live on its body. Sunfish can have up to 40 species of parasites living on its body, and the only way that it can get rid of them is swimming up to the surface and hoping that a bird lands on it and plucks them out. And now at this point you might be wondering, how did the sunfish make it this far? I mean, how did this rotting, parasite-infested chunk of meat that's too big to be eaten, that can't grow a tail and can't swim to save its life, how did this manage to survive for 50 million years? Well kids, just like every Z-list, clickbait, 3 AM challenge, only fetuses watch them YouTubers, the answer is simple. Quantity over quality. When a sunfish lays its eggs, they release around 300 million eggs all at the same time. I mean, when you're dealing with numbers that big, you could be a fucking rock that's allergic to water at the bottom of the ocean and still have a good chance of reproducing. Out of these eggs, only a small percentage actually survive and make it to adulthood. In fact, we've only found the first baby sunfish specimen ever in 2020, and we've never managed to find its eggs in the wild ever. So even with a 300 million egg count, a number that should basically make the ocean 50% sunfish, they still managed to get classified as a threatened species. So overall, sunfish, more like dumb fish. Yes, thank you, no, thank you. I am a comedy genius. I'll be here all night. This is the pinnacle of comedy right here. Holy shit, you guys should subscribe. So yeah, those were some more bad animal designs in nature. Like the video if you liked it, subscribe, hit the bell, leave a comment, and watch another video by clicking right here. I'll see you guys later.